All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. I am beyond stoked because today we have one of my old friends and someone I love dearly who is an absolute master at customer experience, events, and he basically gave away the keys to the kingdom today. He talked about the 5 P's of event planning, which absolutely blew my mind. And one of the things he said is when any touch point or communication point is about you and what you've done instead of them and what they're about to do, you've already lost the game. And the whole point of running a successful business, planning a successful event, having a successful experience is keeping it low stress, low complexity, high intimacy, and high profit. So we talk about how to focus on building deep relationships and connections, how to be a guide rather than a hero in your marketing and event planning, identify those 5 Ps, which is the pain, person, problem, plan, and profit, avoid common mistakes in events, which are many, develop self-awareness and maintain integrity in your business, how authenticity and connection are key in building successful events and businesses, how being true to yourself and standing for your beliefs is important, even if that means being vulnerable and potentially facing criticism, taking an integrity inventory and addressing areas of misalignment, how it's crucial for personal and professional growth, how mental creation must precede physical proof, and believing in something before seeing it is an essential. And of course, one of my favorites, how depth in relationships and businesses is more important than width, and focusing on quality over quantity leads to greater success and access. And so we kind of ripped open the keys to the kingdom, and I love Karan to absolute pieces. And this podcast is a gem. So get ready, get a pen, get ready to pause because it is loaded with tangible takeaways and nuggets, whether you do events, you want to do events, or applying all of these same principles into your business, into your marketing, and into your content creation. We hit it all. So without further ado, let's get into the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Mind of George Show. And before I tell you this guest's name, I'm sorry for not hitting record 19 minutes ago, but we just, did the like 4-year catch up in like 20 minutes that was loaded with nuggets. And we talked about the power of relationships and really even tied together so many things that we both teach and stand for that are happening directly by us being here, which is just tickling my heart. Because this man is a man that I've admired and looked up to from the moment we met, and we met virtually and then had 4-hour Zoom calls, different phases of life, have walked complete parallels of like breakdowns to breakthroughs in so many different ways, and both stand for the same thing. And he's somebody that I just have the utmost respect for. He embodies everything that it means to be in relationships, to care about people, to stand for things, to stand in your truth, both as an entrepreneur, as a coach with clients, as somebody who runs events, as a husband, as a friend, and as a man. And we had to kind of do the catch up and obligatory, like, I missed you. Thank you for being amazing. Thanks for supporting me in the dark seasons of my life without you even realizing it, and so many other things. And so I'm beyond excited. I'm actually like very humbled and honored because we've been scheduling this for a hot minute, and the timing is impeccable, and it just filled my bucket to even see his face. And so without further ado, I just want to welcome my friend Karan Nijhawan to the show. Karan, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, dude. And likewise, man. There's a couple of relationships we have in our lives. We've often heard like a reason, a season, a lifetime. I've probably have like a handful of friends that I could say 4 years could go by, 5 years could go by, and there's no awkwardness in the catch up. It's just like, hey, so how you been? So I really appreciate that we built that from our foundation was built on such a solid foundation. And like I was saying to you before we hit record, George, before I was, a client of yours a couple of years ago, you were like, dude, let's just jump on Zoom. And I'm like, well, how much is it? And you're like, what do you mean? Let's just jump on Zoom. And we would have like 4-hour calls, and like the whole relationships beat algorithms. Like, dude, you were a living testimony of your own brand. So like, thank you for also teaching me in that moment what relationship currency is really about. Because even 4 years ago, and it's gotten way worse now with just the noise in the coaching and consulting space, but it's very much, I think the currency for a lot of people is the tangible financial currency. And I think relationships, like this is such a great time for us to connect, and we have such a great conversation ahead, but like you were a walking, breathing testimony of that. So thank you for actually living your brand.
Brother, thank you for seeing me. I was sharing with him before the show that, unbeknownst to him, because I want to use a big word, you met me at like one of the probably like quintessential, like quote unquote darkest times of my life. And I was even unaware of it. Like I was unaware of like what was coming and what was happening, and, your feedback and even how you showed up with me, even as a client, and then we were no longer working together, like just such a man of like love and integrity and always choosing the right thing and willing to look it in the face. Like you're just a positive, powerful example for me as well. And so it goes both ways. And I felt the same about you, my friend, and it's incredible. And I just thank you for saying that. Like received fully, felt tickled, nervous system like fired up right now. What's my heart rate at? Yeah, it's at like up in the 80s. So yeah, like it's landing, and I love that. And actually, that's actually a really perfect. So for everybody listening, I'll give you a little bit of context, but like this man is the facilitator of depth and relationships in the lens of people experiences, but also like at events. And I had him help me with events. And I will tell you that like I'm good and I care. And he takes it to a whole nother level. And we were talking about this before the show, and you just alluded to this. Like the world is going one of two directions. You're either falling into the transactional trap and you're pretty much guaranteed to lose, or you're understanding that it's always been about relationships and depth. And it's something that you've embodied as well and have always been there. I remember that dinner at Eat Restaurant and the questions and the prompts that you brought for us. Like I still remember those and like the conversations that were created. And so we were talking before the show, and I feel like the world is also craving connection again. And everybody's been locked away and in their homes, and you've been navigating this for a hot minute, and you are really the king of like experiences bringing people together. And we're like, well, let's just go straight to dessert and be like, yeah, how do people do this? And when we think about events, right, I think they're overcomplicated by people. I think people think they can't do them. They get really in the way of them. And you're over here like, I can show you how to make 6 figures in a weekend that's sitting inside of your business already. And so I'd kind of love to just kind of give you the floor and let you unpack that, since it's your zone of genius and everyone here is probably tickled and ready to hear.
I appreciate that. And before I dive into that, the first thing is what I remember about your dinner, outside of just the amazing people and the great food and the stuff that you're world class at, was you hopping up on a table or a chair, acknowledging me, saying, hey guys, for those of you who don't know, these cards at this dinner table, and what George is referring to is these conversation cards that we had printed out for his event. Because leaving conversations to chance can go one of infinite ways, but if you can control that narrative. So George and I had these cards made up for really in-depth, meaningful conversations. But that was actually the first time I'd ever been acknowledged by somebody who took the time to be like, yeah, that guy right there, he's the guy who actually produced these. It was his idea. It was this. And I was, in that moment, I was so taken back, because I was like, wow, this guy, like I've never actually gotten credit for, I don't mind being behind the scenes of people. I don't need the spotlight. I don't, I'm fulfilled internally. I don't look for external ways, but to get that feeling from you, that acknowledgement, meant so much in that moment. So just want you to know that, that's you remember one thing, and I remember something that hit me differently, which is really powerful. So I want to know that I haven't forgotten that either. And to your question about events, I believe in low stress, low complexity, high intimacy, and high profit. And when we think about the world of events, the big stages, the audiovisual, the catering, the hotels, this and that sounds like a nightmare. And a lot of people want to do events. They believe in the power of in-person connection. I think it takes 2 minutes of you being online today to see all the inauthentic marketing happening. There's zero customer experience. It's completely focused on what's the quick hit of dopamine, the quick transaction right now. And if you're a coach who's been noticing, hey, I'm feeling unaligned with my marketing lately, or these outdated models are not working for me, and you know yourself, you're really good with people in person, putting off a 6-figure event with less than 10 people can be your norm. And as long as you are clear on the pain that you solve, the person who makes you jump out of bed, the plan that you have, the promotion of that event, and have a really solid profit margin, like 6-figure events are the norm. And I've been doing it for a couple of years now with less than 15 people. So yeah, we can dive in whichever direction you like. But the one consistent thing I'm seeing right now is people are realizing they've been out of integrity, and now they're trying to get reintroduced into new integrity. And it's hard to make up for mistakes. It's hard. You can't just say, okay, I'm ready for an integrity shift. All right, God, send me new clients. That's not how it works. And that's a rabbit hole. But man, there's never been a better time to create small environments of deep conversation, high impact, high vibration. I've had people come to my events, again, like I'm talking 7-person events sometimes, where somebody who I didn't know was struggling with porn addiction came to my event. We did a meditation. In the meditation, he thought about his brother who he hadn't talked to in years, went back home, do this. Like he was caught in the act of virtual reality porn addiction with his wife. His wife walked in, he had the headset on, and it's like you hear somebody and you quickly throw the headset, and his wife asked him, "What are you watching?" He's like, nothing, like a deer in the headlights. And they were on the brink of divorce. His alcohol intake was through the roof, all of these things. He's now been over 2 years sober. And I'm not taking credit for this is his transformation, but I'm saying you can't replicate some of these things on Zoom. So to me, like the power of in-person, small tribes or small communities, call them what you will, in a world that's very dopamine rich right now, there's never been a better opportunity to carve out your pocket and your tribe and create these alliances. And in-person events never go out of style.
Never. And I've been saying this since the beginning of the year. Like everyone's like, I always have like a word of the year. And I was like, no. Like COVID and the world changed the game because people can't be sold a vision anymore. They can't be sold fluff. And they're like, well, what are they looking for? I'm like 3 things: community, endowment, and results, right? Community being a connection with people, endowment being depth of that relationship. And then the third one being tangible, actual results. And not like, oh, I'm going to sell you hopes and dreams. I'm going to send you this, but like not a complication of those results either. A simplification of like, it's not solving the entire Titanic or building somebody's life. It's getting them one step closer to their goal or to their power or to their breakthrough. And like, even hearing this, like we have an event by the time this show's out, it's already passed, but our event's in like 8 days, and you'll appreciate this. Up until like a year and a half ago, I followed it. Like you were with me. We had it intimate. It was like 30 to 40 people. Then I fell into the hotel trap again. And I was like, 70 people, 100 people, gift bags, swag bags, like production. And then it was like 18 months ago, God's like, nope. And bro, literally mind blowing. During COVID, we did an event. We had 75 people. They're like, I love this, right? We always sell 40 to 50 tickets in the first week, right? We launched this event. The first month and a half, 2 tickets. And I'm talking, me, our event's a $750 ticket, 2 tickets. And I'm like praying to God, I'm praying to God. And dude, I was praying, and the only thing that hit me, and this is all that came to me, was 4 walls and feelings. And I literally called Ashley and I'm like, cancel the hotel. And she's like, I never booked it. And I was like, what? And I was like, get me an Airbnb. We're going back home. And then literally moved it to an Airbnb in Dallas. And then instantly it was like all about what it was supposed to be about again, which was like the intimacy and the depth. And even for me, you've known me long enough. Like I didn't even realize how much I was hiding in the swag bags and in the production and in the pieces, but it was just getting in the way of both people's breakthroughs. And so like so much credence and yes to like what you said and the simplification of it. I would love to unpack those 5 P's though, because like I'm over here and the models in my brain are like, yeah, like those. So can you like break those 5 P's down for everybody and like we can unpack those?
Absolutely. And I think before we even unpack that, there's a lot of beliefs that we've all believed, which either help us in some ways or in many ways hinder who we're trying to become. And there's this beautiful quote I heard, and it says, this is how humans are. We question all of our beliefs, except for the ones we really believe in and those we never think to question. So if you've been taught that events have to be this and this and this, and you see people with 1,000 and 5,000 room events with big audiences, and you're already telling yourself a story of that could never be me, you're absolutely right. But if you change your narrative, you change your belief system that I'm here to help and I'm here to serve, who are my people? To me, like the biggest mistake people make with their events is that they try to make them way too broad. We're going to cover this. We're going to cover this. We're going to cover this. So let's just unpack these 5 P's. The first one, and this is the most intimate, is you have to be very clear on the pain that you are solving. Nobody wakes up in the morning and says, I can't wait to get an advertisement today or a Facebook ad or a DM about an event. Like, I can't wait to wake up this morning and see who's got the best events. People wake up with a thorn in their side. This thorn is sometimes public. Oftentimes this thorn is private. It's a thorn that they've been trying to overcome for weeks, months, years, in many cases, decades. It's a thorn that they think is private to them, and they don't realize other people have the exact same thorn. So if you're very clear on the pain that you solve, and saying something like heartbreak is not enough, that's too generic of a word. But saying, have you been secretly cheating on your partner? That's real pain. Saying weight loss, I help people with weight loss, is not enough. Saying something like, do you cringe every time you're at the pool because you really want to go off the deep end, but you're so afraid to take your shirt off because of that one moment in grade 6, and now you've ruined every vacation for the last 25 years because of your narrative. By the way, I'm talking about myself there. I got made fun of when I was in grade 6 about my body, and for 20 years of my life, I avoided anything to do with water, sunny vacations, hot tub parties, pool parties. I was like, nah, I'm busy that year. Every excuse. In many ways, I've robbed my own enjoyment, but I also robbed the enjoyment of those around me because of my insecurities around one story that I was just, I didn't have the courage to actually face. And I saw this world of get abs in 30 days and this and that, but none of that messaging really resonated with me. So the first P is really getting hyper clear on what is the pain that you solve. And George, you're so good at this. Like, your copy, your language, the depth that you take people through in extracting what's really in people's hearts and their minds is incredible. So the first P is really the pain. The second P is a person. Who is the person? Not a list of people, but can you identify, can you physically pick a name, give the person a name. Think about somebody in your life right now that you know absolutely you could help in an absolute heartbeat. What's their name? Give it a name. George, Karan, Tom, Joanne, whatever. Give that person a name. You have to start thinking about that person. What problems are they waking up with? What problems do they have at 2:30 p.m. on a Tuesday? What problems do they have Wednesday nights? What happens to them Friday nights? What happens to them Saturday mornings? What's going through their mind Sunday night? Getting really clear on who that person is, because the better you can describe them, when a person feels understood, they feel like you actually get them. So who is the absolute person? And saying your event is for everyone is probably the most common marketing mistake, where, saying the words, this event's for entrepreneurs, in my opinion, is still too vague. What happens in vagueness stays in vagueness. Like, specificity on the person, specificity on this individual. Who is the person? I've had clients that have had successful events with 5 people, and they've made 6 figures of back-end revenue, which we'll talk about the math and all that. Mm-hmm. The next thing is the problem. And I believe that problems have first, second, and third degree consequences. And one of my favorite questions to ask in identifying the problem is, who else is suffering because of your suffering? Mm. I'll tell you, if there's a problem in my life, I'll tell you who suffers: my wife. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you who suffers: my clients. I'll tell you who suffers: probably my dog, my parents, my grandparents, because I'm not me. I've yet to be able to film social media content if I'm having a bad day, because you can see it in my face.
Yep.
You can see it in my face, dude. When I've had a bad day or a bad morning, you'll never see me film content. And I don't mean that like I'm very authentic in how I present myself and everything you see online is real. But man, I've got a hard time putting myself out there when I feel like crap. So getting hyper clear on what is the problem. The fourth P is the plan. And this is the one people freak out on. They're like, well, what am I going to teach at this event? I don't know. How am I going to teach 2 days worth of content? The thing is you're already taking clients through a journey right now. You don't know it, but you've already figured out, well, this is the first thing I would do with a client when they enroll. This is the second thing. This is the third thing. As the exact path you're taking clients through right now to help them have their transformation, to get them from point A to point B, is the exact curriculum for a live experience. So the first thing that you would do with somebody on your onboarding becomes day 1, morning 1. The next thing you would do becomes day 1, morning 2. And I know this sounds simple, but most people freak out about the content of the event. Dude, you're amazing, but I don't remember the content of the event I went to 4 years ago. I remember the relationships. I remember the breakout sessions. I remember the breath work. I remember the dinners. Like, that's what I remember. The content is just for some people to justify, oh yeah, this event's 5K, 10K, because I'm going to learn X, Y, Z. But I've realized that these small, intimate masterminds and these events are very little about the content. And that's the biggest hurdle for a lot of people, is they psych themselves out of the content thinking, I'm not smart enough, or who would pay me to learn this? If you've helped one person before, you can help 1,000 others. It's the exact same process. So the plan is very important. And then the last P is really profit. And I'm all for healthy profit margins on events. So I believe in front end tickets with a back end enrollment. What does that mean? Get 5 or 15 people to invest $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 on the front end, and then have a 25, 30, 50, 100K offer in your back end. You need less than 5 people for a 6-figure weekend. It has been low stress, low complexity, high profit, high enjoyment, high intimacy. I know people doing 200, 300, 400. I just had a friend do a 500 person event, and I think she made like $20,000 on it, 500 people. And again, just the expenses are through the roof. So I think you're absolutely right, George. It's these small events can be highly profitable. And until, Roger Bannister who ran the 4-minute mile?
4-minute mile. Yeah.
It's like, until he did it, like nobody else could do it. The next year, like 17 people did it.
Yep.
Or some version of that. So same thing, when you see somebody have a very successful event, 15 people, you might think, well, that's only a 15-person event. Dude, my clients are, making 6 figures on small, intimate events. Some of them are doing them in their homes.
Yep.
So to me, it's like, if you believe in the power of in-person connection, you believe in the power of storytelling, you believe in taking people from point A to point B. If you've been given a gift that can physically, mentally, spiritually change someone's life, you owe it to them, you owe it to yourself. And most people are too smart for their own good. They look for all the reasons why they shouldn't do something. And I'll be the biggest proponent of, putting small audiences in tiny rooms together.
Bro, there is so much in here. And just to even call out a few things you said. Number one, like, holy moly, I love what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. Like, I know it was just like a one-liner to Vegas, but like that one, because even as a marketer, like I fall into the vague trap all the time, right? Because I get, I'm going to do this. And like, I forget some of those pieces, but a couple of other things. And I'm so glad that you said what you said of like, oh, your event 4 or 5 years ago, right? Like, I don't remember the content. I don't remember blank. Like, I've been saying this to people when they ask me to describe my events. And I was like, the only reason content exists in an event is to set context and leave space for people to find their breakthroughs with each other, right? Like, to create that depth in that team. And then even what you talked about on like facilitating an event, right? Like, for me, events are about depth, not width, right? It's, you're taking something that you're already helping somebody with or helping other people with, and you're installing it at a deeper level because you have the ability to be witnessed in it and in person in it. Like, that's where I see it. And I've even fallen in the trap too, because when I went and started growing the events again, right? And I was like, oh, we're going to have this and this. I felt off. And the reason I felt off is because I felt out of alignment because I couldn't go as deep as I wanted to go. And then the results that followed were shallow, right? Because there was that piece that was missing, that like intimacy piece that was missing. And so I love your absolute breakdown of that, and in so many ways. So the first P was, what was the first P?
The pain.
And then second P? Person. Third P was problem. Fourth P was path. Plan. And then fifth P was profit. And, for me too, like for everybody listening to this, because like this is already past our event, but like one of the things people always tell me, and they're like, you don't sell at your events. I'm like, no, I have an anti-sell rule. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, I have a pro-serve rule. Like, I'm not having you come to a room to convince you that what you have isn't enough. I have you come to a room to give you what I promised you to help you get there. And then if you win and you want more, then of course you can get a hold of me. But even like all of our speakers, and back when, like the people that you met, like, I'm like, no, you can't pitch. You're not paid to be here. Like, you just want to serve. I'm like, you're here if you want to serve too. Cause like, that's the other thing. And I would actually love to ask you about this, because you're in the event space too. And like, sometimes, and we'll actually unpack two things at once. Sometimes I get canceled, but I can't anymore because I basically do it myself. And I'll have you unpack that one in a minute just to open a loop with everybody else. But then like the second thing about it is like you even said something earlier about like, just because somebody says you can't do it doesn't mean you can't do it. Like somebody said you can't run a 4-minute mile, but then he did it and then other people did it, right? And I think with events, the biggest thing that I see is there's so many of them that just feel like they're lacking depth and lacking integration and lacking pieces. Like what are some of like the big mistakes or the things that you're seeing that people are trying to do that are really like genuinely getting in the way of them having that authentic connection? Because the thing that's happened in the world is, quite frankly, and I joke about this, but I'm serious, like COVID sped up the filtration process because it exposed so many people so quickly to all of the like the dirty strategies, tactics that whether unintentional or intentional lack that depth. And none of us would ever go to a store, buy a product, get home, have the product not work or not be taught how to use it. And they'd be like, oh, I'm so stoked I bought this product. But yet that's what most marketing is turned into. And even live events, right? These transaction machines, these like, let's lead gen, let's collect here. And then nobody ever ends up putting them on. So like, what are some of like the big mistakes or the things that you see from another person that's like in the event space with clients in the event space? Because I feel like you nailed this at the beginning. If you have an audience, whether it's an audience of 10, an audience of 20, an audience of 30, and you can find an Airbnb or a location, you have the ability to go deep and not only create results for them, but create massive clarity in your business, get the best feedback that you could ever get in the game, to get reps in the game and practice, as long as you're not attached to all the quote unquote what it should look like, right? Because there's people like, we never do an event with 10 people. And I'm like, says who? Like, where do you start, right? Like you always start with them. And so I'd love to kind of hear like some of the things that you see, because, you know, we've been in this game for a hot minute, right? And I'm going on like 2 decades. And I swear at this point, I think I've seen it all when it comes to like masterminds or events. I'm like, you're doing what? Like that doesn't seem to be working. So I'd love to hear your thoughts on like what you see that's like not working to help other people avoid like the pitfalls.
I think one of the biggest things I'm seeing is this distinction between you being a hero versus you being a guide. And my man, people love what's everyone's favorite noise, you know, their own voice or like that someone saying their name. But there's this hero complex of like, let me just go out and save a bunch of people. And what happens is that comes across in your energy, that comes across in your marketing, that comes across in the way you email. That it's your intentionality is may be amazing, but the impact you have is quite different. And we're taught to go save people. We're taught that our gifts can help, and in some cases they may be able to help, but nobody is looking for a hero. When I shifted my business model to let me just be a guide or a mentor, or a partner, call it what you want. But man, when I started guiding people, it felt so different.
Yeah.
And I heard this distinction between there's two ways to spell the word sale. There's SALE, which makes you feel like a marketer or a car salesman and a price objections. And then there's also another way to spell the word sale, which is SAIL. What does that word invoke? A journey, a partnership, uncovering enchanted territory, like a place to go, a destination. So I stopped making sales, SALE, and I loved making sales, SAILS. So events are about inviting people to come sail with you. They're not about the sail, they're about the long sail and the journey. So this whole like hero versus guide thing is been a game changer. And if your marketing is littered with me, I, how I, this, I mean, you probably have taught this for decades. Like change that to you, your, are you, do you feel this way? Have you experienced this? What does this feel like? Like just changing the copy, even on most landing pages I see. By the way, big misconception. You need a fancy landing page to sell tickets. Most of my ticket sales now actually happen in the DMs for $5,000.
Yep.
You can do them on Google Docs. I've got clients selling 5K events on Google Docs. But again, I made that mistake years ago too. Like, look at all these testimonials I have and this. And like at a certain point, you become the hero. And as much as you think you're adding to your authority and your credibility, it's actually diminishing that from other people. That's not how they see you. So I think this hero versus guide mentality, it's just it could also just help them in their business. Like, I'm not trying to really, like, if you're drowning and I'm on a boat and I drive past you, I could throw you a life raft, get you onto the boat. I didn't save you because you will still die eventually, but I gave you a couple more breaths.
Yep.
I gave you a couple more days with your family. I gave you a couple more vacations. I didn't save you because I have an expiry date too. Mm-hmm. But what the life raft allowed you to do was stop drowning and give you a couple more years back of your life. Mm-hmm. And I think that if an event is structured that way, of like, we're here on this journey together, let me guide you through the territories that I've discovered. Let me prevent all the F-ups I've made in my life to save you money, time, resources, energy. And do you want the shortcut in 48 hours? Mm-hmm. It's like, that's why I love books, man. It's like someone's years of wisdom compiled in a little 100 or 200 page document that you get for $10. Are you kidding me?
Yep.
In fact, when people come to my workshops on how to host retreats, my objective is to either have them feel like, yes, this event model is for me and I'm all in on events and I want to center my business around this low complexity one-man business. Or it's to realize, hey, events are just not for me. Because the investment that you just made into my event coming for 2 days, whether you love it or you realize that model is not for me, has saved you now years of what ifs or should I or this and that. And so I've just started extending the time horizon of the people I want to work with. And if I can help you make a discovery that's going to save 10 years of your life, to me, I'm like, wow, what a steal you got to come experience it. I'm so glad I could be that guy for you to tell you that this thing that you've said you've wanted for a decade is actually not what you want.
Yep.
And I've consistently, now more than ever, dude, now more than ever, I'm talking to a lot more people that are wealthier than me, tell me about how my model is so attractive for them. They've got big teams, big complexities, huge payrolls, tons, thousands of clients. I'm like, man, I want to work with like 50 amazing people a year. Mm-hmm. Really, I only need like 30. Mm-hmm. Are there 30 people out there who believe what I believe? Are there 30 people out there who want to take a relationship off of Zoom and meet in person? Absolutely, man. But I'm very clear on the person, the problem, the pain. I'm very clear on all of those things. And a shift that I've made in my organic marketing, because by the way, I sell out all my events without doing ads because I've just never been good at that game, honestly. I've just been an organic guy since I started. But lately I've made the shift in my marketing. And one of the biggest worries people have is like, what will people think of me? And if I really speak what's on my heart, am I going to get repelled or shunned? And I think that's really smart in your marketing. But I've been posting as if I've already been canceled. Mm-hmm. Like, what's the worst thing that could happen? What we fear is like, well, we'll be canceled and nobody will want to work with us. Dude, I've realized, and by the way, 99% of my sales come from people who've never liked or engaged on any of my posts. Mm-hmm. I would say lurkers or buyer. I have so many people that DM me privately who have never engaged with my content. Sometimes I really have no idea who they are. And then the next day they, enroll in one of my events. So I've just come to realize that people that like and people that have got a lot of time to help the social algorithm for sure. But man, when I started speaking from the heart, I found out like, who am I really? Who are really my friends? And who are the people that I'm totally okay repelling with lots of love? But I'm for some people and I'm not for other people. And I'm 100% at peace with that. Yeah. And sometimes you have to, look at where in my life have I been out of integrity? Mm-hmm. And where have I been super in integrity? Like, give yourself a pat on the back too. But I recently made a list of all the ways that I've been out of integrity in my life and all the ways I have been in integrity. And I feel like, number one, it was an eye-opening exercise, but you start to notice themes, and you start to notice patterns. And you're like, oh, so whenever this happens, I typically fold. Mm-hmm. Oh, whenever I'm in this type of room, my demeanor changes. Oh, when I'm presented with this type of an opportunity versus this type of an opportunity, I go against my values. Oh, this is a pattern. Mm-hmm. And I've been doing this for a decade. And this is what happened in my house growing up. And like you just start to hit these ahas, which is really, a very polite slap in the face. But man, to have that awareness, there's some certain things in life that you see and you can't unsee. And there's certain things you hear about yourself that you can't unhear. And to me, like this journey that we're on of self-discovery is the most beautiful experiment of our lives.
Okay. So luckily I have that like photographic brain injury brain where I'm going to remember like most of this because like number one, I have to start with, bro, I missed talking to you. We could do this all day, every day. And my bucket is so full. And I forgot how deeply aligned we were in like every single way, shape, or form. And so thank you again. I just needed to give you some gratitude because like my bucket is full just listening to you over here. Second thing, and I'm going to do this backwards. You just said something about self-awareness. One of my favorite quotes from Thich Nhat Hanh says, awareness is the finish line. Because at that point, you have the opportunity to choose, right? When you catch the pattern, you become consciously incompetent of that, and you're just missing the habits and behaviors to make adjustments. And so I want to unpack that integrity exercise a little bit deeper in a minute. But you also said a few things. And when you were talking about sale versus sale, you know, I think even with customer journey, people don't understand what it truly is, right? They hear the term, they throw it out there, right? And number one, a customer journey is not when somebody pays you or gives you their credit card. It's from the first time they ever interact with you. And this is your relationships. This is your friendships. This is baristas at the coffee shop. This is clients, potential clients. But when I define this to people, I'm like, a customer journey is you building a series of steps to get somebody to a destination, making them the hero of their own journey. Because the other thing that happens in the mistakes that we were talking about is when you become the hero, you condition codependency and pre-spoken expectation and resentment. Because we can't do this for anybody. You can't run the race for anybody. And you end up in this rumination trap of like death. And if you think about it like an Olympian, right? The Olympics are happening right now. And gold medal coaches, no matter what they do, can never be in the middle of the race with the athlete. And if an athlete gets to mile 15 of the marathon and their shoe comes untied or they lose it, and all they do is stop and say, wait, where's my coach? What do I do? Everything's already lost. Like, in my opinion, that's the whole point of being the sail the second way, is guiding a path, a destination, and empowering somebody to be the hero of their own journey, because you can't be there in their life. Like, even when we coach people, I can't come through your laptop and be there when you're like at 11 p.m. Like, I'm not going to be there in your kitchen stopping you from doing X, Y, and Z, right? And so even that like framing of it and understanding, like whether it's events, whether it's coaching, whether it's selling a course or selling a product, is the whole point, is to make you a hero of your own journey. Like, if you go buy something from the store, can you imagine if you had the expectation that every time you use that product, you had to call the person who sold it to you and have them show you how to use it, like a coffee maker, an ironing board, like you name it. And so even just framing that solves so much pain for people that I see all the time, because we also on this side end up internalizing that and putting pressure on ourselves that like we can somehow control it, which then leads us to feel disconnected or overwhelmed and not be able to authentically help, because we're both dancing in the same bucket. And so like there was so much depth in like everything that you said, and I didn't want to like guide over it, because even in the lens of an event, and it took me years to learn this. Like I was just facilitating an event 3 days ago. It was an ego eradication event. And literally people were coming to get uncomfortable in ice baths, hikes, and saunas to leave their ego at the door. And I said to them, and the thing that we always have to remember is we only serve to get served, right? Because the person that's at the front of the ship is not safe from the storms. They just are getting hit in the back as they're looking at everybody in front of them, trying to prevent them from getting hit with the same storm. But like, there's this constant dance back and forth, right? Like, you've seen this, I've seen this. And when we facilitate, it helps bring awarenesses to our blind spots and our agendas and our places, that then we can loosen them. But like, there's so much depth in what you're saying. And like, people, number one, want to feel seen, right? They want to feel heard. They want to feel respected. And they want a teammate. Like, you know this about me. Like, I still to this day, I'm like, please don't call me your coach. Call me your teammate. Like, call me your family member. Like, I'm not in for a reason. I'm in for the entire season, no matter what it looks like, because nobody can guarantee results. But I guarantee if we stay in together, we can figure out how to get closer and one step further. and pack that in. And so the first thing I want to unpack, because I think this is huge, and I have been teaching this for decades, when you're like, you, or I even have it in a model now called the triangle of poop, because Branson named it, right? And it's the 3 mistakes that people make with customer journey. And this applies so much to events, right? But the first one's zone of doubt, right? Which is basically leaving somebody in the commitment reverse zone. But the second one is the inverse journey. And I say when any touch point or communication point is about you and what you've done instead of them and what they're about to do, you've already lost the game. And that also speaks to your relationships. It speaks to your friendships. It speaks to people that you meet. Like, nobody loves talking about the conversation where you walked into a restaurant, talked to the waiter, and all they did was tell you about yourself the whole time. You remember the person who asked you questions about you the whole time, to feel seen, heard, and respected, right? But we were talking about this before the show, and you're like, I basically speak as if I'm already canceled, right? And one of the things that's happened in the state of the world in the last couple of years is, you go back pre-COVID, like 4 or 5 years ago, nobody really cared what you believed or what you stood for, because the world didn't dictate that it mattered. People were basically collecting fluff, right? They'd go to like 5 events a year. They'd be in 3 masterminds. They'd have 2 gym memberships now. And I know you see this too. People like 1. Like, I'm picking 1 event, or I'm picking like 1 coaching group, or I'm picking 1 blank. And marketing is not about features and benefits. It's about beliefs. And in order for somebody to feel safe with you, because that's what we're doing, like, somebody has to feel safe to come to your event. They have to feel safe to buy your program. They have to feel safe to listen to your podcast. They have to feel safe to follow you on Instagram. Like, think about the amount of people who come. You don't just go click follow. You look at their content, you read their bio, you consume a few things, and you're not looking for like, can they teach me marketing? You're looking, do I align with this person at a very deep level before I hit follow, because I'm about to be associated with them. And we look for that. And 80% of it is about beliefs. Like, what do you stand for? What do you stand against? Like, this is the core of what I build with my private clients, right? It's building a movement, right? It's, for lack of better terms, culture. Like, it's shared beliefs. Because even if somebody wants to shift, they have to know that they think and feel the same way as you do, to have a common ground, to hear what it is that you want to share with them, to help them embody that belief. And so I want you to unpack this a little bit of like speaking like you've already been canceled. Because like, I've been in this bucket. And when I, quite frankly, was shocked when I came out and I started posting scripture and things that were resonating in my content about my relationship with God, I had both sides of the coin. I had coin number 1, like, how dare you? Like, what do you mean? Like, you're doing blank, blank, blank. I thought you were blank. And I'm like, really? Like, I'm just saying that I stand for love, and I choose to see you perfect, whole, and complete. And I'm going to always turn the cheek of like softness and love, and you're getting upset at me. But then the inverse of like, this is why I never hired you, because I didn't know what you stood for. And then my dream clients show up, and I'm like, oh, got it, right? And that fear of like, well, what if I say what I say? What if I do blank? I'll never forget when I was in a room with Simon Sinek, and we were talking, and him and Clay Hebert were talking, and they were talking about keynotes. And he's like, your job should be to offend at least 10% of the audience, or there's no point in speaking. Because unless you're in a stand for something, unless somebody knows what you think or feel, or that you have this belief, neither side can take action. When in actuality, we don't realize that when we refuse to stand in our authenticity or in alignment at the deepest level and share our truth, we're getting in the way of both parties, like you referenced, either realizing I want to run an event, or realizing I might never want to run an event. But if there's not a line in the sand, nobody can do either. And so I'd love for you to kind of unpack that.
Man, 4 big ideas just came up as you're speaking. This is such a good conversation. You're absolutely right. Number 1, it's like, if you don't know what you stand for, you naturally become a follower. Mm-hmm. And you have no idea what race you're in. And nobody wants to win a game that they don't want to be in. What's the point of winning at a game that you never signed up for in the first place? The second thing is, I believe events right now are all about self-identity. Mm-hmm. If people don't align with you, your values, what you stand for, like, oh, like George is always out with Branson. He's always, with horses. Like, that's part of your personal brand, and people see parts of that. So again, just tying that back to, like, it's less about the content. It's like, do I align with this individual?
Yep.
The next thing is like a lot of mistakes are being made in marketing right now. One of which is like, everyone likes vanilla ice cream, but it's never anyone's favorite.
No.
Like, it's a good standard baseline flavor, but no one's like, I can't wait to have vanilla ice cream. So like being boring in your marketing is I think is a cardinal sin.
Mm-hmm.
Like, just because you feel like you have to. And the biggest thing I want to share with you on this topic in particular is the story about a woman in a red dress.
Mm-hmm.
Have you heard this before?
I haven't. I'm so glad you're sharing it.
So I'll paraphrase. There's a woman who goes to Iceland. It's been her childhood dream to go to Iceland. Before she goes on her trip to Iceland, she decides, I want to wear this beautiful red dress. So she gets to Iceland. She's on a tour bus. She's wearing this beautiful red dress. She's with 100 other tour members. They get to their destination. Tour operator says, all right, guys, we have 6 hours to go explore Iceland. We'll see you back here in 6 hours. And before she goes hiking and exploring the fjords and the mountains, she goes into the bathroom, changes out of her red dress, and puts on her hiking gear. 6 hours go by. She comes back on the bus. Now, at this point, people are getting back on the bus, but she's at the back of the bus, and she hears there's a commotion happening at the front of the bus. Now, she's too far back, so she can't hear what's going on. By the time she gets to the front of the line, all she hears is, well, there's someone who's not yet returned. What she didn't hear was that the earlier passenger said there's a woman in a red dress who hasn't yet returned, and we can't leave until the woman in the red dress reappears. Now, because she was so late in coming back to the bus, all she heard was there's a missing person. She didn't hear there was a missing person in a red dress. All she hears is there's a missing person. So they begin to form search parties because we can't leave until the woman in the red dress comes back. She joins a search party, not knowing this entire time she's searching for herself. They bring in the Coast Guard, they bring in the rescue service. They still can't find. Only like a day goes by and they realize, she realizes she's been searching for herself this entire time. And I think a lot of people right now are in search parties that are not to any benefit of their own, but because they don't know their vision, they don't know where they're going, they're just hopping into somebody else's search party, not even being fully clear, what is this person actually searching for? And am I in the right search party? Am I playing this game? Am I playing the game I want to play? Am I working towards something I really genuinely want? I have met the most millionaires and billionaires in my life in the last 12 months, me personally. And I've also heard how miserable they are because they were playing a game in some search party that somebody taught them that's success. And they didn't question that. And they themselves were the woman in the red dress this entire time. So I would implore people, at least you owe it to your life. You owe it to your loved ones to ask yourself, am I in the right search party? And if you're not, it's okay. Don't beat yourself up. Just realize I've been playing a game that I never signed up for. So let me go find a new game, or let me go create my own version. Mm-hmm. So I don't know how we got to this, which just feels natural for us.
Oh, I do. I do. My brain on the other side, I'm like, oh, no, that's so perfect. And it tied into that events are about self-identity, and really like, that's what it's always about, though, too. Like, even for you and I, for the parts of our personal life that we shared, both of us can come and high five right now that there's no finish line. None. It's a constant re-evolution, right? If you want to go the Joseph Campbell route, it's the hero's journey doesn't complete when you slay the dragon. It completes when you return to teach the village. Oh, and by the way, when the village is taught, guess what? A new dragon appears, right? And it's this constant growth, because that's the other thing, too, that I've seen specifically in entrepreneurship. We got lazy and complacent because it was easier 5 to 6 years ago. Like, you could have a quote unquote webinar that worked for 18 months, right? Like, you could have a series of events, and no matter what, it was sold out for like months and months and months in advance, over and over and over. But everything has shifted so quick that, and my dear friend Alex Sharfin says this, like, you don't have the business you want because you haven't become the person to run it. Well, you also don't have the life you want because you haven't become the person to run it. It doesn't mean you can't have it. It means that what got you here won't get you there. And as Benjamin Hardy breaks down in all of his books, or Nicole LePera breaks down in her books, it's not about do, be, have, it's be, do, have. Who do I have to identify as in this current moment? And really, this is a kind of perfect segue into like, where do I have to do an inventory of where I'm in integrity and out of integrity based on my deepest values and beliefs, to then make behavioral adjustments to start bringing those results into focus. And this has been like really the biggest part of the game for most people, right? Like, even if you want to go transactionally, like, you know this better than anything. Like, you were talking about like, oh, people want to do events and some people want to do big events, right? Well, you have to earn the right to do a 500 person event, but you're going to start with a 5-person event. Like, I will never forget my first event. It was in the crappiest hotel lobby that I could afford. It was like $700. And I spent months making up like how bad this was going to be, like not good it was here, charged for the tickets. And I had some of the most incredible, successful people come to that first event. There were like 18 people. Like, I was at the grocery store buying snacks. I was like writing things out by hand. And like, I'm so grateful for doing that event because, number one, it shattered every belief that I had made up, like every fear that I had made up. Yeah, go ahead.
Also, imagine if you didn't tell yourself those stories leading up to the event.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it would have been game over. Game over, right? And so you kind of have to earn the right, because even when you were speaking earlier, and I'm just going to tie something in, when you're like, oh yeah, well, I've had 7 or I've had 15 and like I might only need 50, or that's all I want to work with. Well, even living in that belief unattached to the outcome is what's going to make 100 show up. It's what's going to make 150 show up, because it's about, and Ed Milet says this better than anybody, don't measure your confidence based on the results, measure it based on your intention. And I say measure your value based on the integrity and intention of your inputs, right? Not the results, not the optics, not the stories, but it really starts with truly acknowledging where you are. And for me right now, and coaching so many clients and seeing this, myself included, I've been through what feels like 65 identity shifts in the last 12 months. Like, I'm like, oh, again? Oh, God, got it, right? Like, your big sense of humor, right? Like, oh, I told you my plan, gone. Built a studio, took it away. Built one in the house, moving again. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm identifying as a backpack princess now. And luckily, I've leveraged relationships, and I'm in somebody else's studio that I've been building a relationship with for 5 years. They gave me a key card. They're like, you can use anywhere, anytime. And I'm like, well, this is my season, right? And it's not allowing it to get in the way of the outcome, but it's asking myself, like, who do I get to be in this season to be able to create that? And the thing that you shared with me earlier, and I want to have you unpack this, is you did an integrity inventory. And this is something that we do at events with people. I do this with my clients all the time, and I do this with myself all the time, right? And really, the way that I think about it is, all too often we say we want to change our destination, right? Like, we don't like where we are, right? We don't like what's currently happening. So we want to get somewhere different. And we get massively obsessed about this destination, right? And we're like, I want to go there. I want to go there. I want to go there. And we start running. And I was like, well, I'll give you a really easy solution. Open up Google Maps on your phone and clear out the starting location and destination, and put in a destination 1,000 miles away from you that you want to visit. And they're like, all right, cool. I'm like, now hit go. And they're like, okay. I'm like, what happened? They're like, it says I need a starting location. I was like, oh, because you can't get somewhere that you want to be unless you fully acknowledge where you currently are. And you might be stranded in the middle of the desert, but if you refuse to look at it, or you make yourself bad and wrong for getting in that situation in the first place, not packing enough water, not having the supplies, you're going to die. But if you take a moment and just acknowledge where you actually are, Google Maps can tell you how to start getting out of that situation. And for me, that's what like an integrity inventory exercise is about. And that's the easiest way for me to frame it. So I would love it if you could like share this with people.
Yeah, I think this is some of the most life-changing work that I have done, is being incredibly honest with myself. And I felt like my check engine light was on for a while, and I would just put a happy face sticker on it. Like, I don't see it. It's like, if your car is due for service, putting a smiley face sticker so that you can't see the light bulb with the alert is not going to make your engine better.
Nope.
And the easiest stickers available to us today are, binging YouTube videos, buying another course, getting more books. I've had clients who literally just hit order on Amazon and feel smarter just because they know a book is coming. They come, they read their 3 chapters, and then they order their next book. It's like, how many stickers do we need? to validate or verify, I'm okay. Like the amount of people that I know, and you probably as well, that are suffering so deeply, yet it takes 2 seconds to look at their Instagram stories and you're like, wow, that's not the you I know. Mm-hmm. Like what you just told me on the phone last night at 3 a.m. versus where you are right now at 11 a.m. That's a different person altogether. So, man, there's so many.
Just I have to say this. It's not even people I know. It's people can currently see this with me right now. Like just to be in full transparency, because I also, when I answer these things, I also never want to speak from the lens of like, I have it figured out. I'm living in the process because it's where I belong, because the game never ends. But even like right now, I haven't been on social for 3 days because I'm still navigating a conscious uncoupling, and I've been traveling and living out of a backpack, and emotionally I was off. And this morning I got in the car and I just cried for like 35 minutes. And I called Ashley and I was like, I need to cry again. And then it was out and I was like, oh, I'm back. I'm going to go do this today and this today and this today. Right. And I just want to acknowledge that for like everybody listening, because like even before we started recording today, we both shared how we both have breakdowns that are actually happening at the same time simultaneously. But it's really that you don't allow the fault, blame, guilt, and shame to eradicate into you or identify as them. You look at it like a lesson, and then you're like, oh, what can I do to adjust this? Or what part of this needs to be tweaked? Or what can I change a little bit differently? Mm-hmm. Because like, I think, and you've known me for a long time, I feel like one of my biggest pitfalls was that I always pretended. And I knew I wasn't there, and I teach things so confidently, but what I never acknowledged to everybody is that I was teaching everything that I was still learning on my own, and that was my accountability. Not that I'm advocated from it, or not that I have it figured out. Like, no. That like I teach the things that I'm reminding myself of every day so that I can stay accountable to like who I want to be as a father and a man and a partner and a friend. Not that like there's some finish line, right? Like that's the biggest part for me.
Dude, it's so powerful. Like if you hired me, I know you're in like ripped shape now, but if I was a marathon training coach and you were just getting started and you're like, Karan, can you train me on how to run a marathon? And I say, great, let's do it. Is there anything I need to know? I'm like, no, I'm good. We start the marathon journey. And I'm like, why are you running with a backpack on? You're like, oh, it's just my water. It's just a couple things that I always run with this backpack. I'm like, all right, cool. Is there anything I need to see in that backpack? You're like, no. It's just my typical backpack. Just my water bottle. And little do I know that you're trying to run this marathon and you have 5 pounds of grief in there. Mm-hmm. And then you have like 15 pounds of your money stories in your backpack. And then you have like 55 pounds of like childhood stuff. And then you have like 170 pounds dumbbells of things that like you haven't forgiven your parents for. And I'm asking you, what's in the backpack? And you're like, oh, it's just water. I'm good. And you're like, well, I'm following your step-by-step marathon process. Why am I not running faster? And I'm like, why aren't you running faster? Like we've been training for this thing and your backpack has a 6-ounce water bottle and I can't see in your backpack. And every time I try to ask you what's in the backpack, you just say, hey, it's just water. I think it's this protective mechanism of like, I'm good. Like mm-hmm. I'm good. So I feel like if you don't clean out your house first, then everything else is just a distraction. It's temporary. I've been in that world of like, let me just get the temporary relief. Yep. Like I know I need stitches, but really I just want a Band-Aid.
Yep.
Dude, you need surgery. No, I just need a Band-Aid. Dude, I can see your bone. You need surgery. No, I just need 2 Band-Aids. Yeah. So I just think there's too many Band-Aid fixes right now because they feel better. They're accessible. They're often within arm's reach away. We know what we should do versus what we must do. Mm-hmm. And doing an integrity audit of your life sounds simple. One side of the paper, where have you been out of integrity? One side of paper, where have I been in integrity? Look for the patterns and then clean your house. Mm-hmm. Close out as many loops as you possibly can of where you feel like you weren't really you in that moment. Mm-hmm. In a non-judgment, like you're not judging. Mm-hmm. You detach yourself from any sort of self-judgment, because if you beat yourself up for where you've been out of integrity, the exercise kind of defeats its purpose. But if you go into the exercise with a judgment-free mentality, saying, you know what, I've made some mistakes. my intentions were pure, but my impact was not.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to start measuring myself now going forward, not just on my intentions, but how it's impacting people. But I can't do that until I fully close out and clean my home. And I mean home metaphorically here. Like if I just clean out all my skeletons, if I just close out everything that I feel afraid of, I'd also invite you to write down a list of all of your secrets for yourself. They never have to be shared with your partner or with your family. But I recently wrote down a list of all my secrets. And man, I thought about things that I forgot about.
Yep.
I'm like, whoa, how could I have, like 12 years ago, this thing was pivotal in my life. And I forgot about it until I gave myself the best thing in the world, which is a blank sheet of paper and a pen. Is like the best journal you could possibly give to somebody. Yep. And I asked myself, like, what secrets have I been carrying? And I came home from my trip and I said to Brandy, I'm like, babe, there's a couple things that I kind of forgot about, genuinely. Yep. And I started and I didn't realize that I was actually, this guy being like, everyone should be vulnerable. Everyone should tell your stories. And here I am, forgetting to tell my own to the woman that I'm married to.
Yeah.
So man, there's this, again, I can just tie it to this self-identity. It's self-identity. It's constantly discovering what more am I, who more am I, why am I here? What am I here for? Just having very non-judgment conversations with yourself. And then just having someone or having a group of people to reflect that back to. And the thing that you have overcome is the basis of your next event.
Yes,
that is it. That is it. The thing that you have overcome is the exact event that you can do.
Yeah. Okay. So listen, I'm already pre-scheduling. We're doing round 2 or at least 3, but we're definitely doing round 2 and we're going to make this one scheduled way sooner than possible, but and see, I even have to correct myself. And one of the analogies, cause you know this about me and I joke with everybody. I was a Marine, right? There's only 3 colors of crayons in my box. It's black, white, and pink. I like to relate life into really simple metaphors or stories that change my perspective, right? And, even talking about what you just shared, think about if we go home to make dinner for our family tonight, or you go home to cook for Brandy and you're like, okay, here's my intention. I'm going to make you a prime rib with mashed potatoes, right? And you go through the whole process of dinner, you put it down on the table, and then she eats it and doesn't like it. You don't ever not cook again. You get some feedback, you make adjustments to the recipe, and then you put it back in the oven because you have to eat a couple times a day, right? Or if every professional athlete, every time they lost a game, they're like, oh my God, I threw an interception. I can never play football again. They don't internalize those pieces. They take them as feedback to make adjustments so that they have the ability to continue the process to work towards being the best, knowing that there is no finish line, right? The moment, and I was joked about this too. I'm like, you want to tell if a UFC champion's going to keep his belt? Watch his post-fight interview when he wins the belt for the first time. And if he says, oh no, I have to adjust this, I'm unhappy, I'm going back to the gym tomorrow, he will retain that belt. If you watch him and he's like, no, I'm done, I'm here, it's great. It's just a ticking time bomb because the behaviors have already changed that created the result in the first place. We show up to races to pick up our trophy because the work is done in practice. It's the practice that's the most important part. But even if you have kids and you're listening to this, imagine if your kid's drawing a picture for the first time, Dad, I drew you a rainbow. And I'm like, the colors are out of order. You should never draw one again. I would never, and I mean never say that. When he shows me the rainbow, I'm like, that is the dopest rainbow I've ever seen, and it's better than anything I can draw. And I'm like, what colors in a rainbow? What are here, right? There's that process part over and over, and that inventory part over and over, and this self-mastery and self-identity, right? And as much as it's funny to joke about, if I just believed every fortune cookie I've ever read in my life and followed what it said, I'd be a trillionaire right now. But it's always going to come back to those same simple pieces, right? Your story, the way that you see yourself, the way that you make actions and behaviors, the simplicity of how you execute it, right? Karan and I do a lot of similar things. Like he does it with people in events and coaching. I help people scale their businesses doing it, right? But here's the funniest part is most of it is getting them back to what they did in the first place with simplicity, because scale comes from subtraction, not addition. It comes from depth and not width, right? And mastering things at a deeper level and not allowing the distractions of like, oh, I can do it this way, or I can complicate it this, or no. Like, what moves the needle? And even for us, it's those simple things of like keeping these practices, keeping things focused on like how we move the needle, like taking this inventory practice. And the one last thing I want to share about that before we wrap the show, the reason they say the devil's in the details is because the details keep you in stagnation because they're 18 inches away from your heart. And if all you're doing is thinking about it, you never take the action. God's in your heart. The devil's in your brain. Your heart is where you know. But even in processing, and a lot of you know this, I was bulimic. I was sexually abused. I've done horrendous things in the world. I've seen horrendous things in the world. I've committed. I basically had narcissistic tendencies in my relationship with my ex, and I was emotionally abusive because of trauma and all these other things that were horrible. And that exercise that you are talking about, writing down my secrets on a piece of paper, the easiest way to win is to get it out of your head. And it doesn't matter if anybody else sees it. It's to eliminate it and create a place of neutrality, whether you write it down. I love recording it into audios and then deleting the audio and emptying the trash and like it's gone, right? I write letters to fires and like throw it in the fire, but how it was taught to me, and I can't share all of it, but I was in a personal development group, a deep experiential-based personal development course. And the second part of this experience was mind numbing, and they turned off all the lights, and I mean pitch black, and they play really loud music, and then everybody gets to scream their deepest, darkest secrets out loud because nobody knows who's saying it. And I mean, I heard things where I thought I was a monster, and I'm like, I could have never, but also to be witnessed in it. And then they turn the music off and everybody just keeps going, because once you start to release it, you get it out. But those things are subconsciously running us, right? Like Jim Quick, my dear friend who we all know, he says, you think you're driving the car, but it's your subconscious beliefs that are actually at the steering wheel. And if we allow those things to ruminate, we allow the doubt, or I can't do an event, or like, why would everybody ever come to my house for 2 days? Or like, why would I be able to do this? Or, if we don't make those adjustments, we're not creating any new evidence to give ourselves a different story to tell ourselves. Just like you called me out on, like, what if I did that event believing it was going to be great, regardless of the room that it was in, or regardless of the people? Well, I don't know, but now I just believe everything's going to be great, because I know the worst that happens is I say sorry. And I'm like, let's make an adjustment. Let's do this. Let's order Uber Eats. Let's get a different chair. Let's change this exercise. But that confidence comes from just flexing the muscle over and over, but never, ever if I don't start flexing it or running with that muscle. And so, dude, I just like, okay, hold on before I forget. Where is the best place for people to connect with you, like in your one-on-one deep capacity? Like, where is like the best place for people to be like, come get a relationship with you?
Absolutely. And, I've been really thinking about all the things that I'm seeing in the marketing world today that I just deeply disagree with.
Yeah.
I don't have a funnel right now. Probably for the rest of my life, I'll never have a funnel.
Me neither, bro.
If you just want to connect with me, I'm very active on Instagram. The Retreats guy is pretty easy to remember. And George, just one thing I'll say is like the biggest lesson that I've learned this year, and I've known it for a long time, but to know something and believe it are two different things. But I firmly believe now that mental creation must precede physical proof. If you're always waiting for physical proof, it's like, when I see it, I'll believe it. No, it's actually the opposite. When you believe it, you will see it. And that has completely changed my life this year.
Oh, brother. Well, that was the last question I was going to ask you anyway. So like, how perfect of that one. I even talked about that on a podcast earlier today. And I was like, oh, that's faith at the deepest level, right? I even joked with you before the show. I'm like, when you forget, when you ask God to move mountains, you wake up with a shovel. And then you have to put the pieces into place for that recipe to come in. And I love that. And so it's the events guy on Instagram.
The Retreats guy.
The Retreats guy. And then for everybody listening, we'll link it in the show notes. I'll link I'll link all our current stuff because, we're connected everywhere and all those pieces. And we're definitely, and I mean like as soon as possible, going to have to schedule a round 2 because there's so much more to unpack and I can do this with you like all day. And so here's my ask for everybody listening though. I would love to know, knowing and experiencing Karan, and by the way, connect with him on Instagram, shoot him a DM, tell him your biggest takeaway, send him all that like love that we do over here, or that I invite you to do more often and connect with people at a deep level. But I would love to know, like, even based on the context of like what you heard today, like if you could have us talk about anything, if he could share anything, like what would you want him to share? So just shoot me a DM on Instagram with whatever those are, and I will load them up and have them for when we do round 2 and probably like round 3. But just to give that, if it can help, whether it's events or whether it's the mindset or whether it's something underneath, like speaking about how you've already been canceled or unpacking what your beliefs are or, the behaviors that we talked about. But I would also take this as an opportunity, right? Like I'm pretty sure based on my nervous system right now that my heart rate's at 100. Some of these things tickled for me as reminders. I'm like, oh yeah, that's a really good reminder for me today. Thanks for the reminder. I'm gonna go take a look at that and do another inventory. And I maybe have some more secrets to release. But if anything tickled, take action on it today. Like not tomorrow, not next week. Like just take the first bite of it and like put it into practice. And I can speak for him. Genuinely, if you need support in any of it, DM either of us, and I promise you will get the same level of support. If you need to share something, if you need to release something, if you have a clarifying question on something, like let today be the day that you pick up the phone. If you're like, I've always wanted to do an event, it's so timely that this happened today. Well, great. DM the guy that's like the best at it, right? Like he's who I called, like back when I was doing events. I'm like, I want to go deeper. I want to go deeper. I'm good. Way better, right? Call him, right? If you're like, oh, I want to do this, like ask him, like let now be the time to start putting some of this into practice because the world is changed. Marketing has changed. The market has changed. And you can either see it as an obstacle or you can see it as an opportunity. And right now I see it as a massive opportunity, which the thing that people are craving is connection. And that's the one secret sauce that you have is being able to connect with people because there is no other you. And you're guaranteed to lose on width and you're guaranteed to win on depth. And depth can't be replaced. Depth is just you, being authentic, standing in your truth, standing in alignment, speaking as if you've already been canceled, creating an ability to go deep with somebody. And whatever mechanism or medium you choose to do that, you've heard it from him. And I know his business. I know how successful his business is. It's not fancy sales pages. It's not 87-step funnels. Him and I are both quote unquote anti-funnel guys. You notice that if you ever want to get a hold of me, I'm like, DM me. I'm like,
I was just going to say, just DM me, man.
Yeah, just DM me, right? Like that's where the game is won. And quite frankly, and it hurts to say this, in 2024, being a decent human being and sharing a pleasantry with somebody is the greatest strategy and tactic that has ever existed because the rest of the world is trying to remove those connections. And so not only do I talk about it, he shared it, he teaches it to his clients. It's the reason they're having the success that they're having, the reason he's having the success that he's having. And I've watched him build this thing bite by bite, depth by depth in relationship to be able to navigate these things. And so the invitation's here for you, right? It's not going anywhere. People want an experience. They want connection. They want endowment. They want community. And more than anything, they want to feel seen, shift what they're doing, and get closer to their goal while being the hero of their own journey and having somebody who cares enough about them to be honest and guide them in the process, not take credit for all their work. And that requires that we show up and we play that game. And that's the invitation today. And so I just want to ask you, because I'll throw it to you because I can't be the last one to speak. And I just realized I was. So do you have any closing words for everybody on the show? Anything you want to share, you want to take us out with?
Absolutely. Appreciate that. And by the way, I remember when you started your podcast 4 or 5 years ago and you're like, I'm launching this thing and I'm going to be consistent with it. And sometimes people say that you're like, yeah, I'm sure you will be. I just knew you would be. And here we are 4 or 5 years later.
500 plus episodes, dude.
Does not surprise me at all. And I guess my closing would be, there's a lot of stories that we tell ourselves. Many are fact, but the majority are actually opinion. And if you just question those opinions, if you question your beliefs just one layer deeper than you currently have been, there's another you that's waiting. One of my biggest things is like, I never want to be on my deathbed and meet the creator and for them to tell me, oh, like you lived a pretty cool life, but like, here's what I actually had in store for you. Like you were meant to do this and you were meant to do that and you were meant to do this. And I would look at the creator and be like, really? I was meant to do all of that? And he's like, yeah, you just have to get out of your own way. So I'm just living as if I'm having that conversation daily right now and just letting my best next step naturally come to me.
I'm so glad I asked. That last part was for me today. So thank you, brother. And for everybody listening, that's what a tickle test looks like. If your nervous system recognizes is it true, it lets you know. And based on the tears welling up in my eyes, this whole conversation was for me selfishly to hear that very last piece. And so thank you for the reminder, brother. And just even before I end the show, like I just want to say that like I genuinely love you, like to absolute pieces. And like today's been a gift, man. Like just timely, perfect, serendipitous, like just a gift. And it's so good to be able to share space and this air and this conversation with you. And it makes me miss some of those like early days. And I'm just glad that we had it again today. And so like, thank you from the bottom of my heart, man.
I appreciate you. Thank you, brother.
Yeah, brother. So for everybody listening, we'll have all of his links below. One of them's going to say DM me. And as much as I'd love to like fly through your phone and force your thumbs or whatever, I get made fun of because I do like the single finger typing because my pinky hurts from holding my phone that way. But whatever way you decide to DM him, right? Like let today be the day that you pick up the phone. Because like I've been saying a lot lately is they're not interruptions, they're invitations from God. You only lose when you don't pick up the phone. And so if anything tickled today, it's the invitation, right? So you only know who's on the other side when you make the first step. You hit dial, you send it out. And so I implore you to give that a try on either side. And so no matter what, I love you all. I appreciate you. Remember that relationships will always be algorithms. You heard it from somebody else, especially the one with yourself, and choosing it and using it to make a difference for anybody else, whether it's an event, whether it's an experience, whether you create that experience on Zoom or in a course or in your current bucket where you have people paying attention to you. You have the 5 Ps. You have the way to speak. It's okay to share your beliefs. It's okay to have a backbone. It's okay to stand for what you believe in. And it's not a popularity contest. It's a truth and alignment contest. And only you can plant that flag and stand in it. And so today's your invitation to do it. So I love you to pieces. We will either see you in the next episode or you will hear me in your earballs. But either way, we're out.